Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar in partnership with Staffbase, Lead with Impact, Embracing AI to Transform Employee Comms. We'll come to intros very shortly of myself and Kevin, my co-host from Staffbase. But over the next kind of 45 minutes, an hour, we're going to be talking everything AI in relation to internal comms, the wider market, what's happening, all of that kind of good stuff. It's brilliant to see so many of you with us today as well. So thank you so much for joining us, for giving up your time. And hopefully you're going to walk away with a lot of nuggets, a lot of insight, and a lot of, what do I do next in my day-to-day as well. We're going to be doing questions, Q&A. We want your Q&A as we go through. Patrick, my colleague, is going to be hosting and manning our Q&A. So we'll just kind of urge you to use the Q&A function in Teams, if that works for everybody. I know there's a chat function as well, but let's just stick to the Q&A function for questions, just so we can easily moderate and go through. And I'll kind of put my hands up. I'll probably get kind of carried away in conversation, so I'll pull Patrick into it. Alrighty, so to kick off with, should we start with some intros, Kevin? Let me kind of hand over to yourself to begin with, and then I'll jump in.
Cool, thanks, Sonya. Hi, everyone. Good to see so many people joining us this afternoon. I'm Kevin. I'm a strategic advisor here at Staffbase, and for the past 10, 12 years, I've done nothing else than intranets, you could say, fortunately or unfortunately. No, but I've been in the space for quite a long time, and it's been very exciting to see the space evolve and implement a variety of different technologies. So I was lucky to help many different organizations across the globe implementing technology and elevating their employee communications. And obviously, AI is kind of reshuffling everything we do and everything we thought was true. So that's why we got a lot to talk about today, right, Sonya?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we've got so much to get through. We've got a heap of great questions spanning content to intranet to future of work, all that kind of good stuff. But a bit of an intro to me and what we do here at Gallagher. So I'm Sonya. I lead our AI transformation practice here at Gallagher. Some of you may recognize me for kind of doing the digital workplace from an intranet perspective, but now kind of firmly focused on this future of work employee experience from an AI perspective. We're actually working with organizations spanning CIOs, organization-wide, but also CHROs, comms teams, to really enable them and upskill them and drive the adoption of AI tools into their workflow. So everything spanning from whether it's a co-pilot, whether it's a vertical use case or that horizontal enterprise-wide tool, starting from kind of the upskilling piece into the prompting piece, into the guardrails and the governance piece. And I think, we'll touch upon this shortly, but the pace of change is frighteningly quick. I think week on week things are changing, month on month things are changing. There's a lot of trends we're seeing with organizations at the moment, thinking about how do we get started? There's a lot of pace change. How do I start to use the tools? How do I start to get all of the value, all of that kind of good stuff? So we're really going to explore a lot of that today with Kevin and myself. And like I said, please ask all the questions as we go through, and we'll come to them at different points in the webinar.
Absolutely. And also for all of you who might not be aware of who Staffbase is, so Staffbase is an employee experience platform. It's been around for quite a while already, founded in 2015, started off as an employee app, but then over the years emerged into a multi-channel communications platform. So not only branded apps, but also intranet, email, digital signage, SMS, Microsoft 365 integrations. So a multi-channel communications platform. And today we're going to be talking a lot about our point of view on AI as well, and also how we're going to think employee experience platforms will have to become AI native, and also how Staffbase plans to do that. Sonya, where do we start?
Alrighty, Kevin. Okay, let's start with the pace of change at the moment. Again, when I'm out with clients, with teams, that's something that really hits people in the face. I think with the democratization of ChatGPT in 2022, that was kind of a really pivotal moment because it gave access to the layperson, so to speak. My dad was using it. My mom was asking me questions about it. We were kind of in work trying to grapple with it as well. So again, starting with that pace of change and that shift, and some people call it an iPhone moment. I go bigger. I call it, a personal computing moment in 1981, when kind of PCs were came. So, Kevin, let's start with kind of the macro trends, and where expectations of technology is changing. How do you see AI fundamentally changing how we think about communications in organizations? And, what's kind of some of the biggest change opportunities that AI is going to bring to how employees are consuming and interacting with information? Because, I always say that, the internet gave us access to information. AI gives us access to intelligence. So again, that's now at the access of a lot of people's hands as well. So yeah, let's kick off that with looking at this bigger shift and the impact on the communications teams.
Yeah, totally. I think that's huge, and I think it's important to look at it from multiple angles. I think obviously AI is not new, and the big wave started what was it, 2 years ago maybe, when ChatGPT was really becoming a thing. And I think over the past 2 years, there's been a lot of focus on on the business side on how we can use it in communications, how we can use it in HR, how we can maybe use AI to improve our processes, how we can use it to become better writers, right? So the basic things that everyone started off using AI for. But I think now people are realizing that the way bigger shift, and that's also what this slide basically visualizes here, the bigger elephant in the room is what's happening on the end user side. What's happening in our private worlds, because we're all starting to adopt AI more, and we're using ChatGPT more and more in our daily lives. And like you just said, in our families, people are in non-technical roles and non-technical jobs start using ChatGPT for personal use cases. And I think that's something that ultimately will then, from that side, also come to our businesses, right? Because all of our employees, all of our target audiences will use different mechanisms and different ways to consume information, and that's a huge shift. So that's something where I think we'll have to realize that ultimately our employees will consume content way differently, and we'll have to communicate it and create content in different ways as well. So I think that's the first big realization to make, and to start thinking bigger and start thinking end user focused instead of just process related.
And that's something that we see a lot with our clients as well, is that a bit like, the consumer grade experience, marketing grade experience, bringing the external into the internal. It's a bit like the interfaces for your ChatGPT, your Claude, your Gemini. They're so intuitive. And you mentioned there, you've got those personal use cases. If it's you're going on a trip with your family, or I actually think, the latest OpenAI survey, recipes was really, really big element, kind of that people are using it for. But again, that shift and pivot into the work is different. So again, when we bring the usage kind of into work, despite whichever interface or tool that we're using, across the workplace, across the enterprise, within kind of your workplace, those use cases and how you're embedding it into the communications daily workflow is a little different. You're not going to kind of be looking for recipes and bringing kind of all of that kind of stuff in work as well. And that's kind of one of the biggest opportunity areas that we're seeing with communications teams as well. We're like finding those use cases, embedding it into workflows, upskilling themselves on where to do that for maximum impact and value.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and ultimately, those are the two worlds that we'll have to bring together, right? We'll have to think about how can we use it to upskill ourselves and create better content that resonates better, and then how do we deliver it, maybe through AI, to our end users, right? I think I brought another statistic here that just underlines the massive increase of the use of ChatGPT on end users' devices, right? And ultimately, this is our target audience. These are our employees using platforms and apps like ChatGPT every single day. And that's definitely something we'll have to be aware of. And I think, I don't know if we talked about it earlier, Sonya, when we chatted pre-webinar, but This is also something that'll come into the internet world, right? If you look at Google, nobody clicks on links anymore, because AI agents are now embedded into search, are now embedded into platforms that we use. So we ask questions and we expect answers. We don't expect to browse or, through systems anymore. And your recipe example, I think previously you would have Googled a recipe, clicked on a website, read through the step-by-step guide, right? Nowadays, you have a conversation with ChatGPT and just use that one interface for it. So that's also a big change in terms of how content is being consumed and how we find information and consume information.
Yeah, the consumption point is really interesting because, again, we already know the digitization of communications, the blend of human, the blend of, digital channels, multimodal has always been really important. And again, when you think of, trends in social media, kind of short form, reels, clips, engaging, again, the expectations are shifting across the wider workforce, but also the world globally, driven by technology. The difference here is we've almost, as communicators, we've got two hats, because we're thinking on one hand, how our end customers, who are our employees, our people, our workforce, that's who we're trying to connect with, how are they consuming information as a result of kind of generative AI trends, all that kind of stuff. So we need to make sure that how we're doing that is landing, it's hitting the nail on the head. But the other bit is like, how are we using and leveraging the tools to make our lives better, to make our, the quality even better, more efficient. I think one of the, it's over the past 10 years, if we look at some of the data, we can see, we've been in like productivity, we've been in a glut of like more. And again, these tools, the generative element is something that actually can start to fundamentally shift that. And again, we work with comms teams, with corporate affairs teams, with kind of business units that are, really looking at how can we start to embed these tools into our daily workflow and processes, and what outcomes can that look like. A little bit uncomfortable at times because, and again, I want to really have this conversation. I know we will touch upon it later, but again, what we're talking about, it's a really big change journey. And again, the fact we've got 132 people on this on a Thursday afternoon is Thursday afternoon, wow, is fantastic. But everybody's at a little bit of a different place and a different starting line from a confidence level, from a capability level. And when I say that, again, we're working with exec teams, upskilling them as well. It's pretty much everybody across the board. So again, the confidence, the capability, the openness, the psychological safety, the kind of that mindset shift that is needed to really start to embed and use these tools, but know how to as well. I always say it's really unfair of leaders to expect people just to start using any tool as well, whether it's like any enterprise-wide tool, if you're using like whichever one it is, right? Because if you're not upskilled, if you don't know how to, if you don't know where to, if you don't know how to apply it, this is that difference between the consumer-facing element that you were touching upon, Kevin, how people like access the tools, and it's so easy. A bit like social media, that switch into the workplace was straightforward, but it's not as straightforward with ChatGPT into actually the workplace usage as well.
Totally. And I think it's important, like I said, to bring those worlds together, and then to try and think of, okay, how can we use it from a business standpoint in a good way? Because some of the things, and I have another study here, some of the things are also quite scary. This has been an experiment by the University of Zurich that basically launched an army of bots on Reddit in a political discussion forum, and try to persuade people and users on Reddit to change their point of view on political matters. And the outcome was pretty strong, but also pretty scary, because the outcome was that AI and bots were able to be more persuasive, 3 to 6 times more persuasive than humans could have been in such political conversations, right? So think of that kind of taken in a good way, right? Persuasion can also be good under some specific circumstances and with some guardrails, used in a way where we as internal communicators and HR professionals want to, for example, align people behind strategic goals, align people behind change that organizations are going through. So that's also something you can use AI for if the AI has enough context and can address persons individually. I think those are the most two important things, right? We all know undirected information does not drive any behavior change, right? It has to be directed. It has to have enough company context and scale, personalization at a big scale. But yeah, using such things that can be scary if they're used for these kind of things, but also in a good way, is pretty exciting too.
Yeah, I mean, for us and me here is like the guardrails are so important as well. So again, if you look at this slide, it can be a little bit scary. It kind of jars a little bit because you're like, oh, actually, it's a piece of technology that is being used to influence essentially. But really, like, and this is a really, one of the big differences of this technology and other technologies is, again, the guardrails piece, the safety piece, the risk piece, the data piece. So, and being intentional with usage of the tools and in which way. So again, we spend a lot of time, writing and prompting, context, all of that kind of good stuff as we go through. But the guardrails piece are really important because that really is what allows speed and adoption. So again, if you think about, your comms teams, you want to be aligned in where you're using it, where you're not using it, where kind of, voice, the human in the loop piece, where not to, kind of which stakeholders to use it with, because again, leadership comms is such a big important part of what we do, but managing stakeholders is super important. So again, that's just something that's really a core element as we progress and lead into this like next era of work as well.
Yeah, let me grab a question from the chat, Sonya, and throw it at you. Where in internal comms is AI most impactful, other than content generation and data analysis?
Fantastic. So again, we're seeing, to be honest, when we think about AI driving benefits, there's two elements that we want to look at it from. So there's again, there's a personal productivity element that comes into it, right? We're all workers, we're all kind of companies, and our working lives can be made better, whether it's through meeting summaries or whether it's through organizing my content better, or whether it's enabling me to, write some copy better. Like we all need to write, like every kind of individual. The next element is like, so that's bucket number one. The next bucket is really starting to think about, actually, when we look at our comms function, when we look at our workflows, kind of what and where are we starting to really, where do we want to start to embed kind of our AI tools in to establish better processes? I'll come on to some specific examples shortly, because I just want to start with, like, it's really about understanding. Step number one is really about understanding kind of like the work that happens today, the processes that happen today, and where, the high effort. We do this kind of exercise to start to think about where do you want, like human first, AI first, or AI can be autonomous with different types of tasks. And I was at the IOIC event in London last week, and we actually did this with a group of 50 people, and it was really kind of, it helped get in people's brain thinking, and it made AI much more accessible, because it should be accessible. This is something that I'm so passionate about, making sure that it's accessible and people know what to do next. And then, so again, on a day-to-day basis, where does that look like from, like, first draft perspective, from content perspective, from, again, and when I say first draft perspective, it's about, how you, the art of crafting a good prompt, how are you like giving it enough detail, enough documents, like all ring fenced, of course. I'm assuming everything's, within the enterprise protected environment. So on a day-to-day level around there. And then you start to get, and we've got a slide later that goes through our maturity model, and you start to get to more advanced use cases, right? Even something like synthetic personas, where you can define and create an agent that has certain characteristics, that is representative of different members of the workforce, and you can test different communications there. If it's a leadership toolkit, again, there's a lot of different messages coming together, whether it's in press releases or whether it's in some big announcements or whichever. You can completely automate publishing that into different channels with agentic as well, like tone of voice, branding, all of that kind of stuff. The key element really is it's about like really getting to that what's in it for me element, because how we all work is slightly different. We have slightly different skill sets, we have slightly different interests. So again, even across our own team within Gallagher, right? We all use it slightly differently, because we have we've leaned into it in different ways, because it really enables, like, we do different work. Other elements to think about is, again, there's a lot of data about this at the moment, but like leaders, leaders aren't at their desks all the time. Leaders aren't, really. There's an element here as to like you need time to be able to know what and where to, use AI specifically, because we still got a 9 to 5. I don't know about you, Kevin, but it still feels as busy. So, we don't really have all the space that, we'd ideally like to have to experiment. And then we have, like life is just life, family, personal commitments, caregiving commitments, all that kind of good stuff. And just, like having a good life, your health, all that kind of good stuff. So again, the balance of all of that is really starting to think about what's in it for me, and then you'll have that key in the lock moment where you start to see the real benefits within your daily workflow as well. It's not until, again, we see it with clients sometimes. I know we were talking about this when we were prepping for this. We have a room of, whether it's a room of like 20 in a comms team, or a room of 5, there's that lack of kind of buy-in and understanding to begin with, and then starting to go through some like workflow exercises, using the prompts, taking them to the next level, really starting to see actually the benefit for individuals from a crafting perspective, from a one-to-many point perspective, and then a time-saving perspective as well. I was with a team last week actually, and I don't know if they're on the call, so they'll probably smirk if I say this. One of them said to me, she was like, "Oh, but Sonya, I feel like I've become even more efficient, but I just have more work to do." And I was like, "Yeah, that's unfortunately a work problem, less of an AI problem as well." But those are the types of things that we're really starting to talk about and see value in. We see other organisations thinking about like awards processes, really starting to think about certain processes and how AI can just enable and support that, but coming at it from a product, from a efficiency perspective, sifting through from like 200 down to 50 in the right parameters, human in the loop. Like, where does Kevin want to check and start, and Sonya want to jump in, but we'll let AI and the tools do the bit in the middle. There's a lot of like mundane and automation that can happen that today people don't really appreciate nor realize, because the media just hypes everything up as well. It's what the media love to do. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Gone off a bit there. Sorry, Kevin. You can see I'm very passionate about this.
All good. All great context there, and great stories. I think just going back to the question, the only thing I would add in terms of where to start is to really find a very niche use case, but one that's potentially very relevant and touches many people in your organization, or one that's only relevant to a department as well, right? I think the biggest failure, the biggest proof of failure for AI rollouts was when you were trying to roll it out too big. I think there was an MIT study just recently published that looked at global corporate AI projects and why most of them failed. And the outcome was that they failed because they were trying to do too many things, too broad use cases, big rollouts across entire companies. So the winning recipe here is to start small, find a very niche and a very specific use case that you try and adopt AI with, and then scale it from there. And I also like some of the examples shared in the chat here for internal comms, for example, testing your messaging and how it would resonate with some of your audiences, right? So if you tell an AI enough about your audiences without necessarily sharing proprietary information, if you then still share enough information, enough context, you can get valid feedback before you publish a very important announcement, before you start crafting a campaign, right? Because you can then double check, okay, how would this resonate with my leadership? How would this resonate with my frontline employees, etc. So I think that's really where it can be super strong, and not only in communicating, but also in planning communications and campaigns. And it also ties nicely into the other question from the chat where Luca were asking the biggest challenges, in my opinion, how to engage diverse employee demographics. I'm sure this is some of the questions you get quite often as well, Sonya. And I think, again, this is huge potential here for AI to scale this and personalized communications more, also to address multi-generational workforces. Because yes, we have to communicate differently with Gen Z versus older generations. We have to communicate differently with academic personnel, office-based versus non-academic personnel, frontline stuff, right? And that's what AI can do. AI can transform your tone, your language, and can ultimately deliver content in a more personalized way to audiences, or even one-on-one, without completely missing the message, right? can still deliver the same message. It can know the tone and the governance that you have in your company, but tailor it to those different audiences. I think that's one of the biggest potentials as I see here as well.
Yeah, I mean, Christine, you've made I love that you're live doing this as well, like testing messages to make sure it lands. Because what, again, a lot of people often, rightly so, because it's a journey, look at their confidence and capability with AI. But when you start to use it more, you start to see that actually it's helping frame thoughts as well. So again, even in the way that you're testing based on persona and audience, and then when you pop that through, or you build an agent, or even if you don't, it doesn't need to be agentic. There's a lot of agent hype. There's so much agent hype, but it's just like the levels that you still need to go through, still need to exist. But you can do it in a prompt, right? You can go into a prompt. You can ask for like who you are, kind of the context, kind of give me 4 different examples, have one tone here, one tone there, kind of, or give me 4 different audience groups, like how would they consume it, really start to challenge it, the Socratic way of prompting as well, which really starts to really push your mind as well to think a little bit differently. And it's really kind of quite a proud moment for me actually, and the team, when we see that with kind of teams and organizations. Kevin, I see a question that I'd just love to jump to as well about kind of, you were touching upon this with AI tools out there, and are some better for some things than others as well. Do you want to take that one first? Because I think it relates a little bit to what you were saying, and then I'll jump in too.
The one on IT security?
No, I think we were in the Q&A. So how different are the various AI tools out there, and are some things better for certain things more so than others?
Oh, there it is. How different are the various AI tools out there? Well, I think there's so many different AI tools out there. Ultimately, I think this is going to be an ever evolving scene. There's going to be new tools, new models. There's going to be broad models that are used for lots of different things. There's going to be niche models that will be trained on specific use cases. There's that agentic layer that Sonya mentioned is going to be kind of living on top of large language models. I think it's hard to say. I mean, there's probably already too many AI tools out there to talk about them, and also to speak whether one is better or the other. I think the only way for you is to try and to play around with as many as you can, and then find the ones that work for your use cases. Yeah, I think ultimately companies will have to find a good way to let employees figure out which tools will help their organizations, right? And on the other hand, that there are the things that you will have, but also those tools will automatically come to you because those platforms that you're already using, Microsoft, Workday, if you are a Staffbase client, all of those software providers will automatically bring AI tools and chatbots and agents and AI elements via other functionality, like, for example, search or podcasts. That'll all come. So by mid of next year, there's going to be so much more tools for us to play around in a corporate world, just because all of those software providers from the softwares that we're already using are all working on launching these kind of technologies already. And that's why, we'll have to, in terms of our role as communicators, we have to learn how to use them, right? And also have to be aware that our content going forward would not only be consumed by humans, but also by AI. And AI is becoming an intermediary between our content and the end users. I think that's a pretty fascinating concept for me, Sonya, that I'm also trying to learn much more about, and also get on the hype train with agents and stuff.
No, there's heaps, and again, the way that is worth thinking about it. And there's something called like horizontal AI, so your enterprise-wide AI, which could be your co-pilots, your Claudes, or which Anthropic or Microsoft or whichever. And then you have your vertical AI underneath it, so a bit like a T-shape. There we go. But that's for more specific use cases. And again, you may have your Synthesias, your Otters, your Canva Pros, all based upon the type of content that you've got. Type of activity that you've got and you're doing. To Kevin's point there, it's just worth bearing in mind that even take a Copilot, right, and take a more advanced use case. So Microsoft Copilot 365, despite whether you've got the the full fat license or the skinny license, as somebody said to me yesterday. Today that's based upon OpenAI's model, the GPT engine there. Again, they're now expanding it to include in Claude, which is Anthropic's model as well. Claude is slightly different, it's much more kind of a creative element, but like there's a lot of creativity in it, a lot of written prose in it. It has different benefits, but what the Microsoft, which is a very clever organization, doing is again starting to bring all the models together to allow for kind of more advanced future use cases. So that's where it starts to think about the use cases that we're really starting to apply different elements to, and which tools you want to leverage and use. A lot of, again, if you're using Copilot, that's based on GPT-5, which is the latest from OpenAI as well. And you can do a lot of really, really great stuff there within an enterprise protected space as well. So it's really about starting to think about the different use cases, and there's certain tools that are better because they're purpose-built and defined. But as Kevin, you mentioned there's a lot. You probably will see, you can see from the data the number of companies, with tools, with AI tools coming up. It's a very proliferated space as well.
Yeah, and I just skipped to that slide here, basically just visualizing what I just tried to explain as well. AI is becoming an intermediary between our content and our audiences out there. So something that will pretty radically change how we will have to update our content and create our content, right? So if you work in HR and you own your benefits program, for example, there used to be a way to communicate certain things to your employees, right? We had the intranet, we had an employee app, we had landing pages, we had PDFs that we sent around, etc., etc. Well, if that trend really pulls through, then employees will going forward not go to those sources anymore, but they will rather, for example, ask Copilot. They will ask they will go to searches, etc., etc. So they will just use different methods, which ultimately will then.
Is that me? I'm not sure.
No, we've lost Kevin, Sonya. So maybe you can continue the conversation.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. Cool. Just give Kevin a little prod in the background just to let him know that. I think what Kevin was saying was that the nature of the introduction of take an AI tool, a Copilot or whichever, has introduced another channel into the workplace. That additional channel is changing where and how people go to access information. And what we're finding, and I also don't think I honestly use the word workflow more than since doing this role as well. But again, because of the user behavior, people are going into their enterprise-wide tool, whichever one it is, and expecting to get the results back, which is all predicated upon the documents and the policies and everything that you have as well on everything that you have within the workplace. So that's kind of an interesting piece to start to consider, and making sure that you're using the right tagging, you've got the right content up to date on there. The risk becomes a little bit higher as you can start to imagine and think about, because not only is it you're basically thinking about the right kinds of data that we have and need to really start to think about. I think we're letting Kevin join, so I was going to just jump to another question.
Yeah, I was going to say, Sonya, should we do a Q&A and help Kevin out a bit? Yeah.
let's do a Q&A, Patrick. I'd love to jump to Hannah's one actually, because this is one that is really, really important, and I think we have loads of conversations about this, Patrick, as well. So just reading out Hannah's for everyone's knowledge. So Hannah, great that you're becoming a key adopter of AI in work. However, you're quite concerned, rightly so, about the environmental impact on AI, especially given the volume of water which is being used for data centers. Is there any way that we can use AI which is environmentally conscious? Great stuff. Patrick, should we just have that conversation? Yeah, I think Kevin will join.
Kevin, let us know when you're back in. We've just readmitted you. There we go. I'll let Kevin crack on with that, then Sonya and I'll come back in later.
Great stuff. Kevin, we were just having a chat about Hannah's question in the chat around the environmental challenges and issues with AI as well. And again, I just want to jump to that. I'll kind of start with this. It's the right question to be asking, and I'll be really honest and open. I'm concerned as well. But where and what we do have a duty to do is learn how and when to use it in the right way. So all too well, we see people use AI like a search engine. If you're using AI as search, you're not using AI in the right way. Again, it's not a Google search engine, because every time you use it, just what is X, what is Y, what is Z. That kind of obviously takes a hit. There we go, and starts to leverage from the data center. So the how we use it, the governance, the guardrails bit is so important to make sure that we're using it in the most optimum and efficient way within teams that also enables and supplements not only the output, but also like what is the best result for kind of our end customers, that kind of human touch, human in the loop, all of that kind of good stuff. I categorically, nothing will connect us more with than as human beings than with emotion, but it is, it's a right thing to say. And again, even consciously, right, using Google search versus using an AI tool, knowing when and how to use it. It is kind of at a macro level that, you can see how much money is being invested within data centers and changes from an environmental perspective as well. So, Kevin, do you want to just jump in? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Oh, yeah, very, very tricky question. Also, sorry for dropping off. Just Teams crashed. Classic. Very, very tough one on the sustainability aspect of all of this. I don't think that. I think it's gonna inevitably happen, and you can see all those, like you mentioned, massive investments into building new server farms all over the world by the big tech companies. So I think there will have to be a solution to it in terms of energy consumption, everything. But I think this is gonna be such a big evolution at scale that it's if one of us uses it for search or only for specific matters won't make a big difference here, because the pure sheer number and the pure amount of use of AI will come from not from private use, will come from business use and from big corporates rolling it out, and software's kind of using models and bringing that at scale to end users. So I don't think that the amount of users someone uses it personally will make a difference here. Cool. Sorry, we got stuck when I was dropping off at this slide here, and I was trying to make a point that when you where exactly did you lose me, Sonya? Sorry.
I finished. I don't know if it was a sentence that you were finishing, but I kind of finished in and chipped in with how employees are going to consume information is going to change, and the expectations of what information is pulling from and which documents and all that kind of good stuff is going to be really important. So yeah, I kind of went down that angle, which I assume you were going down.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Exactly. That's what was the point that I was trying to make.
Yeah.
And I think also kind of thinking about this as a provider, someone who sells intranets. This is also something that we'll have to think about, right? So what will happen to our sources of truth? What will happen to our intranet? Is this gonna disappear behind AI? As much as Google also realized that nobody's clicking on their links anymore, is nobody clicking on our internet links anymore, and it'll probably happen, right? It's gonna happen step by step. It's not going to be a one-day evolution, but yes, going forward, like I mentioned earlier, employees will have access to assistants and will work more with Copilot, will work more with Gemini, will work with assistants that are part of employee apps like Staffbase, and use those to ask questions, right? And the expectation will be that those will surface all the important information. So the source, the article, still has to be there, right? There still has to be a very organized page, and all your benefits information, etc., will have to have a source. But employees might not go there anymore and consume the article, but get it from agents, which is why it's even more important, what I said earlier, that the content we create also has to be very consumable for agents, not only for humans.
And as well, like information architecture is really important. And for the information architecture is just how pages are structured. And again, we spend a lot of time with, Alan and the team spend a lot of time with organizations thinking about that. where people, having information that you can go back to, you can interact with. Again, there's a question in there around, there's a question in the chat, actually, I lost it now, but it was basically around like the human touch, and which I'd love to come onto this shortly, but the role of, how the comms role is going to evolve, and how that's going to map out, because nothing will replace that human touch. It will absolutely not. I said this to a gentleman yesterday I was sat next to on a bench having a little chin wag with in London, actually, and it's like, AI won't replace this. It won't replace like the value I get from an in-person interaction, or a personalized interaction, or that kind of good stuff. The information architecture piece is going to be really important for people to come back to information, to access information, because we're needing to really structure all of our information in the right way as well, especially within the Microsoft suite, the estate, there'll be a lot of kind of SharePoint knowledge management individuals, organizations, which naturally it proliferates in certain and different ways. So again, that will become increasingly important as we go through. I'd love just to, Kevin, touch upon a couple of the questions coming in at the moment around this one from Georgia. I think there's a couple of similar questions coming in around the impacts of AI in how internal communications add value within their organizations, with many people being able to self-serve in content generation, editing, design. How can they provide the best service? And I absolutely love this question as well. So Kevin, do you want to kick off with that one, and then I can jump in after yourself?
Yeah, I think it tremendously increases the value internal comms can have within organizations, because going back to the fact I mentioned earlier, it allows you to personalize communications at scale and to reach audiences in a much more personalized manner. And ultimately, that'll allow you to not only reach employees with the message, but ultimately drive change, right? And inspire people to act on the messages and the strategy you want them to get behind, and the strategy alignments that you're driving with your communications. So I think that's going to be a big shift here, and ultimately we'll also have to change how you're measuring the outcome of your communications, right? You'll have to measure behavior change instead of just communication reach metrics, for example. So that's huge potential here, but obviously so many different layers and a big shift in how we think of communications. But I think the potential is huge here. What do you think, Sonya?
Yeah, I mean, for internal communications, I love this as well, because there's the role just for me exists more than ever. Just what we're doing will slightly evolve and change, and what I mean by that is the art of being able to connect with a workforce. It is an art, and it is a skill that everybody on this call believes in, or you may be from HR. But again, being able to connect and engage with people is so important. What will naturally happen is, again, as AI takes away some of the loads, some of the kind of mundane activities and challenges and tasks. So, for example, it allows with faster campaigns, better content, smarter targeting, insights, measurement. You've got all the governance and responsible use. That allows internal communicators, and again, we do, our state of the sector within Gallagher. One of the top things is that always comes out is the strategic role that internal communications want to be playing, and where they kind of can add most value. AI will just allow more people, more internal comms professionals to play into those areas as well, because again, your stakeholder management, that will never change. You're effective and cut through it and reach and getting all those kind of things, that won't change. The interpersonal skills, even on a personal level, what I'm finding personally as well, and I always love to give these anecdotes, is when I can embed AI and when I'm leveraging AI, it allows me to spend time where really, it's the places that matter. And where does that matter for Sonya Poonian, who works in consulting? That's with my clients, with enabling them, with supporting them, with listening to them, with supporting the team, all of that kind of good stuff. That won't ever go away. The need for that, if anything, will become more so and will become a differentiator, because what AI doesn't have is that human intelligence and the contextual awareness. Yeah, it's trained upon loads of data, all that kind of stuff, but it's just kind of the data element, the human, the the knowledge element, the experience element, the knowing what works, knowing what doesn't work, the judgment element. You can ask it to give you as many alternatives as you want, or you can give it, craft it to be the ultimate persona element that you've got. There's elements of hallucinations within the models, all of that kind of stuff. So again, what we're seeing, and I can see it live with teams that we're working with already, is they're able to play in a space that allows and elevates them into a more strategic role. Naturally, kind of internal communications, a bit like where we see high impact with marketing, with sales, all of that kind of good stuff. It's kind of content generating heavy. There'll be, a lot of organizations seeing this as a big opportunity area, but I've also seen a big uplift in the quality going out as well across teams. And again, there's no element of, like friend or foe or whichever. It's actually like working alongside and using AI as a thought partner, whether it's kind of challenging thought, whether it's like you start, I pick up, bam, there we go. So again, it's really great to start to see and practice that happen with teams and, see them on that journey as well.
There was another question that I found quite interesting. I can't find it, but it was something about how companies are injecting information into LLMs. And I think that's something that'll technology will also help with that, because going forward, technology will be much more integrated with each other. And that's also how we see, for example, the role of the internet evolve, of how does for example, an intranet know more about the company context and have access to crucial company data. So basically trying to build integrations into other systems, right? So an integration into your HRIS system, integration into the Microsoft world, an integration into your IT service management world, like a platform like ServiceNow, right? So hopefully in a modern digital workplace architecture, all those tools will be able to speak to each other, right? And ultimately all those tools will have agents in a variety of forms that'll come to employees. And then you will have to have the option to give the company context to those platforms, and then have your employees use those endpoints to access information from across all those different systems. I think that's a huge productivity lever as well, that will allow employees to do kind of day-to-day tasks so much more efficient, so much faster, without having to navigate across different tools, but really just have an AI endpoint speaking to them, and then have agents do actions on the back end.
It is, but also I know I'm always real. This is very Sonya Poonian, but again, the it's going to take time to get there to that endpoint. Again, things are moving at such pace with integrations, with different organizations developing, like all of the APIs, all of that kind of good stuff as well. So again, when Kevin and I are having these conversations, there's a lot of future visioning, future thoughts, future conversations, but there's certainly a lot of challenges that I'm seeing organizations experience today with integrations, with actually that end goal, with the agentic orchestration layer, like magically happening. And there's a question that I've seen in there around IT. So again, just like anybody with an internet program, IT play a really huge role in this as well. And again, we got like 15 comms folks together yesterday and did like a co-pilot for comms masterclass with them here in Walbrook. And one of the things that, again, some of the individuals were saying was, how do we get licenses for co-pilot or whichever? How do we get buy-in from IT? It's really important to work closely with IT throughout these deployments, because again, there's some elements whereby, thinking about step number one is like your leadership engagement, your upskilling, your enablement, and really starting to think about kind of your AI deployment, because as comms professionals, you'll also likely be playing a role. I can imagine one of, if not many of your kind of pillars in an organization is AI transformation, is digital transformation as well. So again, starting to think about how we manage that from a change comms perspective is really, really important. And that's where we need to work closely with, partners, colleagues within IT, not only so that, we get the full licenses, because, there's only finite numbers in many organizations due to cost as well, but also to think how are we then going to maneuver and navigate kind of how our employees are going to feel when we're deploying this at scale across organizations too. So that's the other lens that, is always worth considering and thinking about too.
Yeah, totally. There's always going to be kind of a maturity a maturity level of companies, right? And I think your model talks to it. That I think we'll have a slide on that later. You always have to be aware of where companies stand. But I think the pressure is becoming higher. The pressure is becoming higher for companies to catch up. And it's not only about digital transformation. It's really about adopting AI. And I think there's going to be more and more economical pressure from investors and those people who own companies, et cetera, to be more efficient and leverage AI. So those companies who wait too long to adopt AI in a very broad way within their organizations will have struggles to catch up with that. So I think it's just adding on top, right? Very aware that companies are still in the middle of digital transformation, right, and digitalizing offline processes, et cetera, but that comes on top, and I think you'll have to just face two waves at the same time here.
Completely. And should we jump onto that maturity model slide in there? Because what's really, I'm really passionate about is we see a lot of, again, we've got so much insight, so happy to have conversations afterwards about this with anybody that wants to. We see a lot of leaders, and at the moment, organizations, business unit, like pausing. There's a lot of inertia because they don't know what next, what good looks like. And as mentioned, we're working with loads of comms teams and organizations today. And really it's start thinking about, what is that maturity model and how does that look and develop as we go through? Starting with, that left-hand side there of traditional, you'll have, and bearing in mind, if you've got a team, different people will be at different levels, at different ways. The goal here is to have the function becoming AI enabled, delivering heaps of value, and actually it's enhancing their workflow, it's enhancing their productivity, it's allowing them to get better decisions. So again, you've got on the left hand side there, you've got traditional where comms is pretty BAU today. There's like literally a sea of information coming in. There's so much on our to-do list. We can never kind of quite get to the bottom of it. And effort's high, impact's low, and we're trying to become more strategic, but we're just kind of, keeping on doing work. And then we started going to that phase of there's some ad hoc experimentation that's happening. So really common today, I'm sure you're resonating a lot, where you've got individuals using it in different ways, not necessarily safely, not necessarily securely. So, popping things into open source models that perhaps shouldn't be, but, they've realized they've got a really good way of doing something. So they just go to that. But that's where you have isolated AI use cases, use cases and usage begins. So like risks are quite high, capabilities a little bit uneven. And again, there was like an incredible quote that I read yesterday from the Moderna CIO. And again, it was like the multi-million-dollar use cases don't yet exist, but it's about using them collectively at scale to drive in the value. And I'm like, that's so kind of well and articulate in what we're trying to get to. And then the next phase is enabled and efficient organizations and teams. So again, this is where the upskilling starts. This is where we're getting everybody up to that same level. We're starting to bring people through on the change journey of confidence, of capability, of, we've got to intentionally upskill people and advise them on, how to use the tools, how not to use tools. It looks like this in the apps. It looks like this in the web browser, kind of the do's, the don'ts, the guardrails, because guardrails, so prompt libraries, use case libraries, that skill set that you're developing and building. That's really where you start to see that quality and boost consistency to get kind of more outcomes. And then we start to go to that top right quadrant. And I always kind of skip and fly over these because that the final one there is like optimize and innovative. Like that will continue to iterate with more advanced use cases, with more agentic use cases. But again, going through this process here is really about starting to think about where we want most teams to get to. And what we're seeing at the moment, as you can see on the arrow there, that bit between traditional ad hoc experimentation, we're seeing, and again, this is changing month on month with organizations that we're talking to, with workshops that we're doing, with kind of team upskilling. We're seeing a lot more now going into that ad hoc experimentation and recognizing and realizing the need to get to that enabled and efficient point to start to kind of scale across their team and really add that value. And I think, Kevin, you've touched upon this as well. There will be a point, there's a lot of capital expenditure, which is just spend on tech in a company, on AI in organizations. And there's going to be the next element is expecting to get that return on the investment. Not yet happening, experimentation, all that kind of good stuff. But again, now more people are starting to understand the journey as to what it takes to get teams, individuals to get there, to start to actually embedding it into their daily work, to change their behavior, which is ultimately what we're doing. And I always say this is literally like a new muscle that we're building. If it doesn't feel slightly uncomfortable, then, you're not really kind of leveraging AI in that way yet. So it's always worth thinking and considering that with ultimately where the team needs to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall we pick up one other question? I think there was one about risks and when to use AI, and is it actually safe to share information with AI? So that's always important, and of course depends on what models you're using, but there's always a way to kind of use it guardrailed and not share everything that you share with the models for training. But also then, of course, there's technical guardrails to that. So you could, for example, run that in your own systems. The AI that powers our employee AI features at Staffbase runs on our own servers. It's nothing that goes out to public training models, etc. So there's always guardrails to that. Nonetheless, you should always think twice before uploading a super sensitive PDF to whatever AI agent you're working with. But ultimately, I think that's also something that speaks to our approach here. And just looking at that slide as well, we want to definitely allow companies to bring in the data that's relevant, the data that you want to bring into the systems, not only the data that lives in the internet, but also lives in other systems, but ultimately also allow you to bring guidance and control, right? And AI will always be a black box to some extent, right? It's cool. You give a prompt and it does some magic, comes back with a result. But what happens in between is a black box, right? So it's important that when you use it in the business context, that you have at least some levels of control. And that's something that we'll try to think through as well. So whenever you will be using AI going forward as a Staffbase customer, we will not only give you the features like a podcast, like a chatbot, we will also give you the control to really put some guardrails in place, to give it the necessary company context, the company brand, the information about your different audiences, etc., to make it ultimately not only something safe to use, but again, something that resonates at scale in a personalized manner with potentially all your thousands of employees wherever they are in the world.
That's great, Kevin. And I think we've probably got to pick one more question and then wrap up. But I think as mentioned, please reach out to myself and Kevin. You can probably see how much we love this space and can talk for days on it. But should we take the last one in the Q&A from Angela? So what strategies have you found most effective for influencing organizational buy-in when it comes to building a clear information architecture, maintaining a well-structured knowledge base, especially as we integrate AI tools into internal communications? And what a great question. Kevin, do you want to just quickly jump in and then I'll finish up?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more crucial, right? Since we're going through so much change, as we just alluded to, and all your organizations are going through so much more change nowadays. I think it's very important to have clear information architecture and well-structured knowledge, because if you're going through change and your employees ask questions and find contradicting information, then it'll just make it all worse, right? And you have to align your people behind a common goal. You have to align your people behind the why behind the change, etc., which is why, and this is the absolute basis, right? If you don't have well-structured knowledge base, whatever that might be, right? It might be your intranet, it might be a combination of multiple different tools. You don't have a very structured way to bring that information to your employees via different channels, or your employees don't have channels to get to simple and clear answers, then you won't be able to navigate any kind of campaign, no matter whether that's change or whatever you're going through right now as an organization.
Yeah, and just finally, before we finish up, what I would say on that, Angela, is the AI conversation is opening a lot of execs' understanding as to the importance of knowledge and data. So again, this is a really big opportunity for, the AI conversation is expanding conversations, which touches upon, the digital workplace, touches upon knowledge, touches upon how we access consumer information, again, all of that kind of good stuff. So the upskilling, the education piece, that should be a way within the organization that we're certainly doing with executive and leadership teams as well, is that opportunity now to start to kind of position the value add of the IA, of the knowledge base, as a result of AI tools. And again, every client that we're talking to at the moment, whether it's, digital or AI, is the future-proofing element is so important. And, the AI is only as good as the data that it sits on. So that is now much more understood as well. Righty, I'm going to wrap it up there. I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody for joining us today. Amazing questions. I know we didn't get through them all, but I'll see what we can do to kind of take them away and maybe kind of send out something afterwards. So, Patrick, I think I've committed some more work there.
Could have carried on for multiple hours, right? So many cool questions.
Exactly. And thank you so much to you as well, Kevin. As mentioned, reach out to any of us, the team, if anybody wants more conversation, follow up, all of that kind of good stuff. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your Thursday as well. So thank you again.